Hello, and welcome back to our Partner Portal series. My name is Christopher, and in episode 3, we're going to be going over the Mosaic grid surface page. The first thing I want to go over is that there are two different versions for the Mosaic grid surface. Each version is based on which wall type you selected in your Mosaic configuration. So there's one for the standard wall, and there's one for the accordion wall. The first page we're going to be going over is related to the standard grid, which is the grid we've selected for our tutorial. The first thing you'll notice is you have two options for the design of your Mosaic grid on the top of the page: background and border. Your grid background is going to refer to all of this gray cell space here on the page. You can upload an image, or you can select from the color wheel. So if you wanted to use an image as your background, you'll have to make sure that the image size matches the grid background size. And you can find the grid background size in the info panel on the right-hand side of the page. For our example, we're going to go with the color wheel, and we're going to use the hex code here for a very specific color that we have in mind, which is going to be a navy. As for the border, the first thing I want to note is that if you turn the border off, you don't have the option to select an accent border. You can only use this option if you have a primary border selected, and then you can go ahead and select an accent border. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to leave it black and white to keep it simple. On the right-hand side of the page, you'll notice this gray info column. All this information will match the inputs you made in episode 2 for your Mosaic configuration. So we're going to go ahead and save this. Now we'll go over and see what the accordion grid surface page looks like. So this is what your Mosaic grid surface page is going to look like if you selected an accordion wall grid surface back in your Mosaic configuration. The first big thing that I want to point out is we have a design elements tab, which we did not have when talking about the standard grid. This design elements give you options to change your header, a side panel, and a footer. The first thing I want to note is that each of those options has a number underneath it. That is the number you're going to want to match your images to. So if you're going to use a header, you're going to want a header with the same pixel size as what's shown here. That's going to make sure the resolution of the image is as best as it can be. If you want to increase your header size, you'll notice that these numbers change, so you'll need to adjust the image to fit this new header size. Increasing the header will also decrease the footer, and vice versa. So if I wanted a smaller header and a larger footer, then I just have to make those changes. For our tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to have a nice middle ground between our header and our footer. And we're going to go ahead and upload our header now. And you'll see that there's a side panel here. This side panel you have 3 different options for. You can upload your own image, you can upload a color from the color wheel, or you can select a chroma green side panel. This is good in the event that you have like green screen background photos that you're going to be taking, because you can just have the green screen right next to your Mosaic. And this panel can be put on the left or right hand side of your grid. For our tutorial, we're not going to use a side panel, so we're going to toggle that off because we're going to go with a border for our image. And you cannot use a border if you have a side panel. If you try, you'll get an error message that says you have to turn off your side panel. So we're going to turn that off. For our grid background, we're going to upload an image, which we have here. It's the black and white version of our main source image. And for our wall background, which is all of this gray area that you see here, we're going to use a hex code for the color. We're going to make it navy. It's important to note that this gray area down here is not going to be like that when you get your Mosaic. This is just to show you the area of where your footer will be. So this tinted blue is just an opacity layer in the toolkit.
Here is an example of what our compiled mosaic grid looks like. We'll be going over how to do that in episode 6, so we won't spend too much time on it here. But this is just to give you an example of what your mosaic grid surface will look like without the opacity layers in the design elements area.
And then for our border, we're going to go with black and then a white accent border. And that'll be the final layout that we'll go with for our accordion wall. But before we save our settings, I want to draw attention to this gray info column on the right-hand side of the page. This is similar to our mosaic grid, but there are a couple differences. The first thing you'll notice is that you have pixel sizes for all of your potential panels, as well as your wall and your grid size. The pixel information is to make sure that if you want to upload a background wall image, that it's going to fit the size and resolution to not have it stretched or zoomed in or zoomed out, as well as what your grid size is going to be that you selected back in your mosaic configuration. That pixel size is also to make sure that your image that you put in is not stretched. So now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and save our settings, and then I'll bring you back to the main portal page. And with that will be the conclusion of episode 3. In episode 4, we're going to be going over the camera app and the customization options you have in that for your event. So be sure to check that out.